Today, as they are in Washington, we're going to be talking about political violence, what happened on January 6th, and what the American people think about it, what they know about it, and some of the misconceptions that they continue to hold. And mainly, we have to talk about the results of this fascinating poll that was put out by Yahoo and YouGov, asking the American people and breaking them down into different groups about different facets of January 6th, some of the common misconceptions. So hold on to your butts. Things are about to get a little bit wild. Let's bring up one of the infographics and we'll see what we can learn from this. Now, I guess, sort of mile high view, the purple dot is the one that you're gonna want to focus on. That's all US adults, and then we can get down into the Democrats versus Republicans so that we can fundamentally lose any remaining faith we have in humanity. But overall, the American people believe, the majority, slightly more than 60%, that it was Trump supporters who gathered at the US Capitol, because of course that's what they were. They had the flags, they went to the speech, they loved the man, they did what he told them to do. All of their social media data backs it up. But then once you look at the Democrats and at the Republicans, very big divergence. Close to 90% of Democrats acknowledged that it was Trump supporters who were there. Just slightly more than 40% admit that at least some of them were Trump supporters. And you can see the same sort of gap when it comes to the election being stolen. Obviously, Republicans believe that it was stolen. Who sort of led to it, inspired it in some part. And the Republicans there don't want to acknowledge that. They don't want to talk about the fact that weeks worth of propaganda from right-wing media, Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, I should say, all of those others might have inspired that. So they weren't involved. It wasn't that bad, but if it was bad, it was probably Antifa, as we'll get to. So anyway, look, later on the show, we're gonna get to the actual effort to set up a January 6th commission, but right off the bat, you can see that it seems like the American people are in need of some accurate information because they've come to some fairly insane conclusions.
Yeah, this is not a thing that's a dispute. I mean, look, most of the things that Republicans believe are not in dispute, but this one is brazen because they were literally waving Trump flags as they were entering. And it's not like we all saw it. So sometimes they'll get completely different news on Fox News or Newsmax or OAN, and they're notorious liars, and they'll have conversations about whether Hugo Chavez, who died years ago, actually rigged the election and stuff. And they'll have, but you don't see Hugo Chavez, and a lot of them don't know that Hugo Chavez is dead and totally irrelevant to our elections. But we saw the flags. We know that Trump gave a speech. We know that was the day of the certification, and the Trump people were mad, and the left wing was not mad, and they were not there. Yet nothing matters, including what you could see with the naked eye. They're right there. And so, nonetheless, 3/4 of Republicans. I mean, look here, let's get specific about this, right? We have, in terms of, it's about 3/4. 3/4 of Republicans saying, I'm not full, 73% pin, quote, some or a great deal of responsibility on left-wing protesters trying to make Trump look bad. That's just nuts. That's just nuts. There is no other explanation, and there is no, oh, my opinion is this, and hey, we can agree to disagree. It feels like Ron Burgundy here. No, this is not an agree to disagree. This is you're freaking nuts, and it's not even disputable, if you will. Rashad, take it away.
I think I figured it out, okay? So here's what's happening. If you will believe that Jesus is a white dude from Europe, contrary to historical evidence or anything else, you will probably believe anything. And I think they're taking advantage of these folks. But there was a time, man, we said things like, the truth needs no defense. That's a damn lie. We are obviously living in an era where the truth needs to be defended more than anything else because of what's happening in the tribalism of politics. You have clear and concise factual information. You have data, you have eyewitness testimony, and you have video. You get no more clear than that in this era. However, the vast majority of Republicans, and look at this disconnect, the vast majority of Republicans are still believing the lie that's contrary to the truth, the lie that was placed by a strategic narrative that said what is not, and what is not is. And because of that, what Republicans have figured out, and Trump figured this out a long time ago, he can literally say anything, and there's a section of the Republican Party that will believe him. Now remember, guys, this was at around 30 to 35%.
Yeah.
Now you have 60 to 80% of Republicans believing the lie when the truth is in front of them.
It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. You laid out perfectly, but the Antifa thing is really amazing. They say it was all left. Like, think about all of what you have to believe for any of that to make sense. The different like twists and turns your brain has to make. So Donald Trump spent literally weeks going around the country telling people that the election had been stolen and that the 6th was going to be a day when finally that theft could be avenged. And he told all of them, weeks and weeks. The Stop the Steal people told them weeks and weeks. Rudy Giuliani was going around, Linwood, all of them going around. Everybody go to DC, go to DC, go to DC. So they did all that. Nobody showed up, no Republicans, no Trump supporters. They just abandoned him, leaving room for all left-wingers to come in. And the left-wingers went to a Trump speech and they cheered at all the lines and he loved the reaction he was getting. Or in theory, some Republicans showed up, but then when Trump said, okay, now go to the Capitol, they all just again abandoned him and walked away to be replaced by left-wing protesters. And then the left-wing protesters who had bought the MAGA hats and the flags and all of that, who had spent months prepping for this, filling their social media feed with stuff about how much they love Trump and how Republicans are great and everything, then are so invested in this that they're willing to get arrested by the hundreds and are now paying the price and that is the cost they had to pay to make Trump pay. But despite that, for some reason, the Capitol Police and the Democrats who are trying to get as many of them arrested as possible are not doing a good thing, even though they're arresting left-wing Antifa provocateurs. So I don't know how any of that makes sense, but that's what they say. And I think that's really how we have to put it. I still have some faith in polls. I think that polls can teach us things, but not necessarily the things that they imply. I don't think 3/4 of Republicans believe that it was left-wing provocateurs or whatever. I think that they will say that to pollsters because they have absolutely no respect for pollsters, science, facts, whatever. They don't answer things as a reflection of what they really believe. They answer it like they want. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't matter that they answer that, because I don't believe that they actually think it was left-wingers, but I do think that they don't care that it happened. They're not worried about it. They're not scared at all. And the difference between what they seem to be saying and what they actually saying, I think matters, because if we believe that they're just wrong, we might put time into trying to change their minds, but their minds don't need to be changed, nor can they be changed. They know what they want, and what they want is permanent Republican rule with Trump as their figurehead. And to some extent, while I care about the truth and I like doing fact checking, wasting our time trying to change the minds of people who are fundamentally lying about literally everything is like Joe Manchin's strategy of finding 10 good Republicans out there. And they're kind of working in the same direction. We don't need them, nor can we get them in the same way that Joe Manchin doesn't really care about and isn't gonna get Republican senators on his side. What we need to do, hopefully, is get Democrats to set all that aside, realize that they were voted into office to accomplish things and make it happen, whether that's a January 6th commission, the For the People Act, an infrastructure bill, whatever. It's the same issue, it's just obstruction, it just comes in multiple forms.
So John, there's parts I agree with, parts I disagree with actually in what you said. I agree with you that they're not scared of these people at all, because when they see those people, they see them, right? They think, well, those guys wouldn't harm me, they are me, right? They saw Black Lives Matter protesters storming the Capitol, it would scare the living bejesus out of them. If they thought they were really Antifa, they'd be like, oh my God, they'd buy 3 locks, 4 shotguns, etc. They're coming to my house, I'm not gonna let them, etc. But they're not doing any of that. So at the same time, and I know that these are 2 thoughts you cannot have at the same time, but I think the Republican mind is broken. And so I think it's possible to have two thoughts that are completely contradictory in their mind at the same time, which is, no, I'm not scared of these people. They look like me, they are me. They wouldn't hurt me at all. We would hurt people together, okay? But at the same time, I think they really believe, no, we are above fault. We are beyond reproach. We would never do anything wrong. The only people breaking the law are black people and left-wingers, by definition. So it must have been left-wingers.
But I think that's consistent with them not thinking that what was done was wrong.
No, they don't think it was wrong at all. And in fact, now we share the poll, incredibly scary poll from yesterday, saying that over 40% of people who consume far right-wing media, but by the way, so that's not Fox News, that's Newsmax, et cetera, et cetera. But for Fox News, 27%, these are giant numbers, saying that it's time to resort to violence. The right-wingers saying, time to resort to violence. Now, Matt Gaetz today talked about resorting to violence. Like they're talking about Second Amendment against the government, et cetera. No, it's over. They think they've lost for good in a democracy. And they're now literally rising up against our democracy and trying to install authoritarianism and treating them like the old ways where we think, oh, he said, she said, I can't, oh, let's be, no, guys. Our democracy is in mortal danger, especially with Democrats being this incompetent in charge. Because those guys, all those Republicans, they're gonna show up to vote again. No question about it. The only question is, are Democrats and independents gonna show up? And if we do nothing, we endanger the republic.
Yeah.
Rashad.
Yeah, so what you're describing is actually indoctrination. And indoctrination is when you're unable to critically think about what you believe. And so indoctrination exhibits itself in contradiction. That's how it expresses itself. So you could literally have variations of thought that are at face value contradictory. But because you are indoctrinated and unable to critically think about what you actually believe, all of these thoughts can coexist at the same time.
Yeah.
And you have now devolved into a reactionary individual based on stimuli of your atmosphere, regardless of truth. You're not seeking truth. You don't care about truth. You have now been desensitized to truth. And I think that's what you're saying. And we saw it systematically happen. Donald Trump, let's be very clear about who Donald Trump is. And I hope history gets this right. Donald Trump radicalized American citizens to become domestic terrorists. That's what actually happened. Now we can keep calling them protesters, it doesn't fit. They acted and engaged in acts of terrorism because terrorism is defined as criminality, aggression, and all of those elements to persuade, influence politics. That's exactly what happened. Well, who radicalized this group? Donald Trump did. And I know we look at the speech and we say, man, he gave this speech, and that speech is what became the catalyst for them to do what they did on January 6th. No, he gave speeches for 5 damn years. This man has been giving speeches for years before president and while being president. And then he indoctrinated this group, radicalized this group, and created American terrorists out of this group. And they did exactly what he told them to do. Yeah. Those are the facts of what happened with Donald J. Trump. We literally had an American president who became a terrorist leader in the United States of America.
And look, when you look at the polling of a giant chunk of Republican voters saying it's time for violence, and that's exactly what Rashad's talking about, and it's indisputable.
And that number's going up, by the way. That number will not go down. That number will go up.
Yes, and guys, if you say, well, okay, but 73% of Fox News voters don't yet want to do violence. Good. But are you comforted by 27%? Are you comforted that it's over 40%? I forget if it was 41 or 48, but over 40% of people who watch Newsmax, OAN, listen to Breitbart, et cetera, those guys, they're nearly half saying, let's go, let's start committing violence against the left, against the government. Matt Gaetz talked about, no, you should use the Second Amendment now against the government. Now, it's not about hunting, it's not about sports. He just said it. No, they're all going in a violent direction.
Or against Twitter, or whatever. As well.
And it never takes the majority. The majority is never the prerequisite. When you look at uprisings that have happened in this nation, and also against, let's say, the Native Americans, let's say against blacks who were slaves, it was the minority of the population who engaged in actual violent criminality. The real question is, how many of that 70+% are willing to sit back and say absolutely nothing?
Yep.
Because that's how the violence prevails. If you have people who are not engaged in the violence, willing to allow the violence to continue.
Yep. Yeah, and last thing is, Rashad again put it so well when he said they were desensitized to the truth. Because now you've seen 1,000 of these polls, but here's another one confirming them. Only 18% of Republicans, this is not people who watch X, Y, or Z, all Republicans, 18% say that Biden won the election fair and square. 2/3, 64% believe the election was rigged and stolen from Trump. 64%. And even more, 72% say they had that enough fraud occurred in 2020 to influence the outcome of the election, okay? But let's take the 64% number. 2/3 of Republicans say, no, it's literally stolen from Donald. Donald Trump is the actual president, and Joe Biden and God knows who else, Hugo Chavez, etc., rigged the machines, and he's not actually the president. That is super dangerous, because I know how livid I would be if I was positive that they had stolen the election. If Trump stole the election and became basically authoritarian and said, I don't care who, like on January 6th, let's say they took the Capitol, whatever, however they did it. If I thought it was stolen, well, then I would be beyond furious. And they got them to actually believe that the election wasn't real. So no wonder they're saying, well, what do we do next? We couldn't win through politics. So the only thing left is violence. And that's where we are as a country now, thanks to the grotesque lies of Donald Trump and the weak, pathetic Republican politicians who catered to him, who became dogs to him. But finally, it is a full circle. I want to explain that this is important. Donald Trump is a con man. He would not have said those things to Republican voters if he didn't think they would be well received.
Yep.
He would have said different things because he's looking to con them so that they give him power and money. And he got a sense, and this is the only thing he's good at. He got a sense that I can con these people if I give them what they want. And what they want is to rule over everyone else that does not look like them. They really, really wanted. That's what they've always wanted. And they do not want to lose that power under any circumstance. Democracy in America be damned.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's the current state of the Republican Party right now. And whether it's mainstream media or whoever else, they need to wake up and see it. I mean, the people that need to see it the most are Manchin, Sinema, and Biden. Well, you're not going to work with people who are now beginning to think about your violent overthrow. When is it going to get through your very, very thick skull that this is not the Republican Party you grew up with in 1868 or whatever? Actually, that would be a very different Republican Party.
Mitch McConnell, but yeah.
Yeah, no, this is not Bob Dole, okay? This is not George Romney. There are no Rockefeller Republicans left. So both the Democratic leadership and the media have to wake up. This is a super dangerous situation.
Yeah. And the only last point that I want to make is, and to piggyback on what Rashad said, those other movements in other countries that we might have seen, that have been able to overthrow governments or whatever, you think of them as fringe things, communicating through underground radio and pamphlets or social media more recently. But this one has the biggest media apparatuses in the country. Like the single biggest cable news show is a constant apologist for their acts of terrorism. And he would be if they had succeeded. If they had killed Mike Pence, he would have still done a sympathetic monologue about them. When they try again in the future, Tucker Carlson will defend them. They are not going to be just sort of hoping to get through as mainstream media crushes them, whatever. They have the mainstream media on their side as they move in this anti-democratic and violent direction.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.